Every week on the Totally Advertising podcast, we meet with founders, CEOs, writers, and directors to talk about the creative choices that have made the biggest impact on their brands. And this isn't just any podcast because
it's totally advertising.
I'm Dallin Koski.
And I'm Damian Dayton.
It's totally rad. It's totally advertising.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Totally Radvertising podcast, where we talk about the importance of creative on growing your business. And today we're here with Jared Ward from Luminous. How's it going, Jared?
Good.
And as always, my co-host, Dallin Koski.
Hey guys.
Well, let's take a look. I sent out a link to a video. One thing we're going to try to do on Totally Radvertising is look at people that are doing interesting things on the podcast and critique their work. So give me 1 second. We're going to, and we will provide a link. We'll provide a link in the description to your commercial and this commercial so people can see it themselves. So I'm going to play it here for everybody. And here we go.
Can we talk about buying paper towel for a sec? They couldn't be more annoying to grab. It takes up my entire cart, and this 8-pack will run me $40. Then you gotta carry it inside and somehow find space to store all the rolls you just bought. And if you're not buying in bulk, you're spending $18 at the corner store for just 2. Why are we continuing to buy paper towels when we can replace all those rolls with this? The average American goes through 8 rolls of paper towels a month, which means you have to run to Costco for this every 30 days. $40 times 12 months, that's $480 a year on paper towels, before tax.
I always like to ask my Super Bowl questions after it. I picked this ad for you because it wasn't high production, actually. A lot of people are investing in UGC. Here's my first question. Did you like it?
I did. I liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was fun. First, I hit it first time. It hit me. I'm like, oh yeah, this is really likable. Second question I always ask after the Super Bowl, because people are like, what do you think of the ads? I'm like, oh, what was your favorite one? What was the brand? Do you remember the brand it was for?
PAPAYA.
Right, great. Yeah. Which is, we went with the one that we looked at last week. It was a really great ad, but most of us had a hard time remembering the brand name. Mm-hmm. So they did a couple things that I think regular content creators can do, and we've talked about this a little bit for their UGC. Like several, not only is she mentioning the brand name every 20 seconds or so, several of the shots she's wearing shirts with the brand name on it. So I've got several reminders of the brand name. People are going to forget that name. And if all I get out of that ad is, oh, there's a paper towel alternative, you go look for paper towel, and now you've just advertised for your competitor, And so that's one of my little pet peeves, but I think that does something good. And I also love that they changed camera angles like every 2 seconds, even if it was just a whip to the side. Mm. So even though it was shot on a phone, they treated it, they put extra love into it. What were things that jumped out for you guys?
First, I'm always thinking, like, oh, how much did that cost? It seems like she filmed it on an iPhone. Maybe got somebody to help with the script.
With some post help, probably.
But the post help, I mean, you could do that with an outsourced editor.
But
no professional lighting or anything. I bet that costs like a couple $100 or maybe $1,000.
Yeah.
But so that was cool. Super scrappy. It was like I tried to do a campaign like that before, so respect it. I liked how.
Well, I'll tell you what I know, because I reached out to the content creator and talked with her. Yeah. So it was an in-house team at PAPAYA, and I think there was at least a writer, an actor, a filmer, and editor. I don't know if the editor and the shooter were the same people, but they had a team of at least 4 people that worked on it. But the average person doesn't see that. The average person sees like, oh, this is UGC, but for some reason I'm enjoying this more than usually when I watch somebody.
Bougie UGC, as you say.
Yeah, I call it bougie UGC. It's just a little bit nicer, so you're just willing to spend. It was interesting though, because they still did things to make you feel like it wasn't lit. You pointed out, like her hair's not done. It's like in a bun. So it's still, I used to say it should be more than somebody in their sweats, but I think she starts in her sweats. But there's multiple wardrobe changes, multiple camera, multiple location changes. So my new theory is great UGC replicates the swipe. So even if you're not swiping, it's changing enough that it feels like it's swiping for me. So I have a short attention span, but that video was long.
It was.
But I felt like I didn't need to watch the whole thing to like get it and want it, you know.
I think the script writers did a really good job because I found whenever they brought up a point and I found myself immediately inserting a counter argument, the very next scene they would dive into the counter argument that I was thinking about.
Yeah, isn't this just a rag? No,
Yeah.
it's not,
Not-
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and here's why. Yeah, they did do a good job of overcoming those objections that come up naturally throughout.
Well, I always thought the brilliance of like a long-term ad is that you don't need to make it all the way through for the ad to be effective, because I'm like 30 seconds and I
True.
get the idea and I remember the name.
There's a lot of cut down opportunity. You're right. You don't have to
Yeah.
watch all 2.5 minutes.
And
of it.
now I've introduced you into their funnel. You know, we'll see what else they send
Yep.
us. But I'm like, okay, they've planted the seed now in my mind.
Yeah.
And I also say, like, the viewer is just like the judge in a TV drama. You don't need to say like you're guilty of being great. You just need to say like, okay, I'll allow it. Let's see where this is going. You know?
Yeah.
And that's you know, as I'm scrolling, that's all. I don't need to be like, this is the funniest thing ever. This wasn't a hilarious video,
Yeah.
but it was fun. And
Yeah.
it felt like it was painless to watch.
I think they did a good one of the things that, you know, I think we even talked about this today a little bit, you know, or bounced around it, is like creating the emotional connection. And I think there were a few spots that like they seem to really focus on the rational benefits of why to buy it, like the cost savings. This is still isn't a rag, right? But I think they also did a pretty good job about getting some emotional connections, like when they talk in the beginning about how much freaking space those things take up in your cart in Costco, right? It's like you have to have 2 carts if you're going to buy, you know, paper towels. And so I love that they did some of those things that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily advertise just on that, but that's an emotional connection to, like, yeah, that is a pain in the butt when I have to buy paper towels,
Yeah.
and it takes up 80% of my freaking cart.
Something that came up for me is great representation of the difference, because this was an example of like, do I do this for Luminous? Because I think I could have done something
Yeah.
like that. But this highlights to me the difference between like really well done and like really scrappy. Just looking at that, a really well produced, basically the exact same campaign would perform way better. It would just be a lot more efficient.
Well, I was going to say, what are the questions in my mind after I see that ad are still, I mean, I talked to one of the content creators, so I knew a little bit about it, and like kudos to their team. Like, I think that is an awesome piece. And I hope just by selecting an ad we're only selecting things that are worth talking about.
Scrappy. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome and scrappy, but they didn't show any packaging. And the same question, like I was first thought like, oh, is this on air, the content creator? Is that the owner of the company? Are they shipping this from their garage? Is it something they made and it's something I could make?
That's exactly what I thought. Yeah.
And I think that's when people they're like, well, what value does production value have? It does tell you something about your company. Mm-hmm. It does tell you, and so I'm like, it made me kind of doubt the technology a little bit. I'm like, is this just some material that they're just chopping up and printing in their garage and sending out? And I think, especially like in a case like yours where you have tech, I need to feel like that tech is rock solid.
Yes.
And knowing that you've spent some money, and I feel that's especially true in technology, in medical, in fashion can be scrappy, but medical, dental, I need to feel some production value tells me, oh, this is a legitimate organization. It's not just some drop shipper.
Right.
It's not Timo. It's not, you know. And I felt that could have been done by seeing their packaging and seeing like, oh, I left that long video not knowing like, oh, I probably can click to get it and I can probably search it. But they never told me. I don't remember them telling, get it here, we'll deliver it to your house, or do I go to Target looking for it?
There wasn't any like reveal. I think that's what was missing for me, is like the bright reveal. And you don't even have to have professional lighting, just like it's in the packaging and then she's all done up like in good hair and makeup and like, oh.
I think to both of your point, you know, and Jared, you mentioned if this had been like, if it had that high production, you know, you think about the packaging of a product, you think about the packaging of a message or an ad, right? So UGC probably isn't the best packaging for that true top of funnel ad, right? And so you take the same, you take the same script, you take the same concepts, but you give it a little bit of a better packaging, it would probably perform better at the top of funnel. I'm sure it's still performing well. It's a great ad, but it could have had that extra punch if it had the right packaging to the creative.
Well, I have a new theory now, which is you can roughly tell the revenue of a company by the type of marketing assets they do. And not because they couldn't afford it, but also because those type of assets dictate the plateau. We were kind of talking about that plateau right there.
Yeah.
So my guess, I don't know, I haven't done any research on Papaya. My guess is I'm like 3 to 6 million maybe, like because that ad they could be on a trajectory to get there. Although that's kind of using like pre-iOS 14 numbers with like one good ad unit like that.
Yeah, I would guess 2 million. 2 million.
I feel like you can. You go to Facebook ad library and you're like, okay, I can see what stage you're in.
Well, I just kind of feel like homebrew UGC, a lot of still ads. You're kind of hitting that 1 million mark.
Yeah.
And if you're getting some professionally produced stuff, and it's not just like a content factory that's making it, you're getting above that 3 to 6, and that's why I saw like, because of what I know that they put some production thought into it, maybe they're above that 1 to 2. Mm-hmm. That's not just one person in the garage, but that's because I know that detail. But I don't think they'll be able to get above that plateau. But if they support this with some high-end production stuff, I think that opens them up to double and triple revenue, where also you're going to get the Walmarts, the knocking on your door saying like, oh, how come we're not carrying this? People are searching for this but those big retailers are never going to take you seriously if you can't produce anything that looks professional.
If you can't drive orders off the shelf.
Yeah, because they're like, well, what's this going to look like on our shelf? I have no idea what this is going to look like on our shelf.
Yep.
How's the week, everybody?
Very good. Insanely busy for me.
Yeah, by the time people hear this, we'll probably be deep in the Black Friday season. But for you, the Black Friday season is a couple months before, really, isn't it?
And it's a bunch of rushed implementation because we do back-end implementations for e-commerce companies. So everybody's in a rush to get everything working and implemented before the big Q4 rush. So
for those of you that are listening that aren't familiar with Jared or Luminous, different sort of guests for us, as we've mostly worked with D2C brands and we've mostly talked to D2C brands, but you're have a really great B2B software that our brands are using that helps with a whole bunch of things. Why don't you tell us quickly about Luminous and what it is and what it does?
Yeah, for sure. So my background is in e-commerce operations. So I've brought a bunch of products to market. Most recently, I was CEO or just the operator of a brand that did about $15 million a year. It was fast growing, fast paced. So Luminous solves the ERP problem or the system problem for e-commerce. Everybody who's run an e-commerce brand, they know that you reach a certain point when you're growing really fast that you need a system. Google Sheets and QuickBooks won't cut it. And you need a system to tell you how much inventory you have, the valuation of it, help you forecast. It's just a system of record. So I started Luminous because when I was an operator doing about $15 million a year in revenue, with all of the complexities and craziness of e-commerce operations, it didn't feel like there was a good enough system out there. It would feel like it did some things, but then...
So you did what every rational person did and you just built your own software to solve that problem.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So now we're a modern light ERP purpose built for modern e-commerce companies.
And it's interesting you mentioned you were at 15 million because I've always said it feels like, in e-commerce there's so many different stages, and when you first start, you're finding that product market fit, and then you're kind of figuring out which channel can I scale. Is it Meta? Is it whatever it might be. And then you run into, once you get over that $10 million mark, I feel like you run into the operational sort of bottleneck where you're like, okay, do I have to have multiple warehouses across the country? I've got to figure out, logistics and shipping and then, there's other stages after that once you feel like you tackle it. But that's really interesting that you felt, that resonates with me where you hit that mark where ops really is like the big bottleneck to growth at that point. And so, jumped in and solved it.
Well,
we've been trying to name those plateaus because working with hundreds of companies hit those plateaus. And I think we met and we were interested in talking at first because our companies hit those like fast growth. And then you're like, operationally, every D2C founder I know has that oh crap moment when you're like, things are going really well or really poorly. And you're like, oh, we're selling so great. And then you just realized, oh, I've been losing money on every order, or everything's on the other side of the country, or, and you just have these small operational problems become huge problems when you're in a growth phase,
What I've noticed, there's two main reasons why modern e-commerce companies feel so complex when you hit that growth stage, like after you've hit product market fit. And it's because modern e-com, there's two specific things. So number one is you introduce multiple distribution points early. That sounds like not a big deal, but when you're doing $10 million in revenue and you're replenishing a 3PL and a warehouse in China and another 3PL and FBA Canada and FBA Japan, that's complex replenishment. You don't even realize how complex that is. Another reason is omni-channel. Brands nowadays, like we meet so many brands that are sub 1 million in revenue, and like, oh, so what's your biggest channels? Like, well, Shopify and Amazon and Faire, and we do some wholesale. It's like, whoa. Like,
yeah, you already have multiple channels for just a trickle of revenue.
Exactly.
And you have to go omni-channel so much earlier now. So much. It used to be like you throw up Meta and you have a Shopify store and you can get to 50 million. Certain brands could.
Yep.
Now it's like, you're right. I mean, you get to 500,000 and people are like searching for you on Amazon, and you got to be everywhere.
I feel like ever since the changes to iOS, and I think people have just realized, oh, I just need to get more places faster. And that requires a higher degree of operational excellence that wasn't required of you prior. You could have one warehouse that's like, we're just going to be all Amazon, or we're going to be all Shopify. That's no longer true. So I'm guessing, but though people at home are probably wondering, why are we talking operations on a creative podcast? But I think one of your disruptive features when you compare what you do to your competitors, and I'm not talking about spreadsheets, but like there's some really expensive, 800-pound gorillas in the room that don't know how to talk about their product. One thing I've said is when you're selling to businesses, you need to remember that businesses are like Soylent Green. They're made up of people. And people sell to businesses like it's a monolith, but not that there's humans inside. Talk to me about the approach you've taken to messaging, communication, and content at Luminous.
Yeah, well, there's a reason why we did the Creatably ad. I mean, using you guys, so many people in my network thought I was crazy. Like, what are you doing? Why would you spend that much money on a top of funnel creative? And for me, I hate B2B marketers. I hate it. And it's typically because the founder or the CEO, they get so bogged down on the unit economics that they just start speaking robots. And it's like, okay, well, we'll spend this much budget on PPC and events and trade shows, and it has to have this specific return. And the results of that is they never end up building a brand. So I think so many B2B companies, they never actually experience efficient ad spend because they never spend money building a brand. So that's what we did. I mean, when I went to market with Luminous, I knew I wanted to do something totally different. NetSuite, they have millions of dollars to just spend on PPC, to spend on meta ads, and they can just outspend us.
And direct sales, just big, huge
Yeah,
sales
just hitting
team.
up my email box.
Right.
Just,
LinkedIn, like 5 messages from 3 different people. Hey, did you get my message? Hey, just following up. It's so annoying.
it's like, wanted to circle back. I'm like, what are you circling back? We never started a circle in the first place. We,
Was there another, tech company or B2B company out there that you feel like had been doing that well, that, had kind of shown the alternative that you wanted to emulate? Or maybe where was like, other than just, hey, I hate how this is being done, was there anything else that was kind of the genesis of the idea of, thinking about your marketing differently?
No, not really. In our space, absolutely not. Honestly, coming from e-commerce, I aligned with how e-commerce companies advertise and the brand building and the humor. And I really like PillowCube and their advertisements, which led me to Damien. And
we first met at a Silicon Slopes event, but you were willing to show me pieces that you had created. And this is one thing I think I love about entrepreneurs. You can tie the difference between entrepreneurs and people with a good idea is you were just like, set up the camera in my bedroom. Like, my first commercials is just me and like your software's still developed, but you're like, no, we need to get information out there. We need to say hello world more than we need to do anything else right now. People, and we talk with a lot of people about this. Your number one competitor is not your competitor, it's ignorance. Most people don't know that there's anything out there.
Oh, totally.
So that's why they go to search and why people pay a lot for PPC. But if you can say like, hey, this exists, you're just already ahead of the game. And especially with B2B marketing, if you have any personality and makes like, oh, this seems like a human I want to talk to, when somebody reaches out, more likely they're going to reach out to you and like, hey, can I borrow a minute of your time so I can buy your product?
Yeah,
I
and
wanna talk with
I think that's the biggest thing. That's how I've approached this go-to-market with Luminous and advertising is I don't care about the unit economics. I'm not going the path of every B2B company, which is like, okay, let's slowly scale up PPC. Let's slowly scale up this, like just static advertisement with dumb copy. I wanted to build a brand. And what is building a brand? Well, it's like, it's identifying where can people touch Luminous? Like where can a touch point be? So a podcast, educational videos, just videos on YouTube and TikTok, totally revamping our website, putting our hypothesis out there. The way me and Alex saw this was so many B2B companies, they'll spend $50,000 on a booth. And the way we saw it is like, okay, well, why not invest in our own studio to develop our own content and our own brand out of, and why not invest in a good top of funnel campaign? Because our hypothesis was we're going to be 4 times more efficient than our competitors if we do it the right way. So we did it. We spent 12 months putting bad videos out there and just experimenting. But the results were, and we did it all culminated with a top of funnel campaign with Creatably. And the results went from like a 0.5% conversion rate on the website to a 4%, which is insane.
especially in the B2B world. I think a lot of people want to like D2C people are like, oh, that's fine. But like, no, in a B2B world,
That's
you're
insane.
talking about a price per lead, and they may not be a qualified lead, so be able to convert people that are coming looking for you.
And just for reference, the efficiency gained in ad spend is, we've probably spent something to the tune of like $40,000 across our different channels, and we've already sold over $500,000 in ARR, and that's we're getting better and more efficient, insanely efficient. And what's funny is all of the companies around in the area, I have so many founders who will DM me and just like, dude, who's your ad buyer? And it's like, that's the wrong question to ask. It's like, I could give you my ad buyer and it wouldn't do anything for you. It's everything.
Well, and that's why Dal and I wanted to be on this podcast. Is like, hey, there's a performance part that he understands, and there's a creative part, but we know that those ideas have to go together. You can't put bad creative with a. I don't know who's the car and who's the gasoline, but you can't put bad gasoline in a good car, or vice versa. You can't put jet fuel in a Honda Civic either. But so take me through. Let's dissect your sales funnel and where you're putting time, money, and effort into. So, top of the funnel, we did a Creatably ad for you. Then, what is your middle of funnel? Like, if my first touch is there, what's my next touch look like for a brand?
So middle funnel is probably a bunch of types of content. So we have tons of educational videos. So when somebody lands on the website, I would consider our middle of funnel content to be our e-commerce archetype series and a bunch of educational things. And this is basically like,
but it's also edutainment, like, because your stuff isn't just a talking head. Your stuff is cut in the TikTok style. You've got a lot of graphics popping up and jokes and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like, I'd say middle funnel is getting to know the team and getting to know our thesis on the market, because everybody is tired of NetSuite and Send7 and like all these systems. And so you come to our website and it's big and colorful and there's people and there's a story of like, this is why we're different. Then as you start getting more closer and closer to bottom of funnel, that's when it's like podcast clips and Luminous versus videos. So like we do creative videos on us versus a competitor, which are some of our highest viewed videos. and it goes even lower than that. Like we embed content everywhere. So most B2B companies, they'll just send you like a boring pitch deck that's like super generic, doesn't really give you much information. We customize every single deck to the needs of the prospect, and we have an archive of videos, like of feature videos they're quick, they're snappy, they let you know what you need to know, and we embed content there as well. So it's all throughout.
And I think this will blow a lot of B2B. I mean, not only are you doing paid advertising, you're all in on organic too. Where are you putting your organic efforts, and where are the places that you have organic content?
YouTube is the main one. I mean, we have a presence on TikTok. It's not as good, but I would say it's these two channels. It's LinkedIn and YouTube. LinkedIn, everybody, all of our employees post on LinkedIn. We have a massive, like we have a good presence on LinkedIn. It's people engage. We get so many impressions.
That's really cool. All of your employees are active on it. That's when it's really powerful. That's awesome.
And you know, so I can't take all the credit for LinkedIn. My head of marketing, Alex, she was pushing me to do LinkedIn for a long time.
And you're probably like, it's the boring Facebook. Why do I want to go there?
It can feel so cringe, like when you start posting, but you just got to keep going with it.
Well, but I've been saying this for a while, that the more boring the platform, the bigger the opportunity. Because they're used to such button-down content. If you can be entertaining, you're just going to win.
Yeah.
Because people are like, okay, I've got to go here for work, or I'm doing, I'm networking or whatever. I'm like, oh, but this is enjoyable to do. So I'm going to watch this ad, or I'm going to engage with this content because they seem like interesting people telling interesting stories, or they're funny,
I personally think LinkedIn is a gold mine that so many companies, even D2C, need to potentially mine, because we're seeing the transformation right in front of our eyes. They're transforming to like a video first platform. And like you said, if you can not be boring, there's some of my posts have gotten like 100,000 impressions, and it's just like static text.
Yeah.
And we're starting to do more video, and like there's such an opportunity. Like you could get, there's LinkedIn conversational ads, thought leadership ads. It's great.
Yeah. So is there a strategy, or you're more tactical on Facebook or on LinkedIn, or is the idea just, hey, have everybody there? Or is there somebody who's giving everybody what to post, or are you just like, everybody knows their job, talk about it?
Everybody generally knows. I mean, we have very loose content pillars. It's like one of the content pillars is like building in public. So it's like we have a culture of authenticity, and like so many tech companies, they don't share any numbers, like had a killer Q4. It's like, well, what does that even mean? How many customers did you bring on? What's your ARR? How much are you spending? How much are you burning? So building in public and just being very transparent so other companies can also learn. Another one is just the story of Luminous. So like, just NetSuite sucks. ERPs suck. Here's what we're building. We have loose pillars, and everybody sort of just follows suit. It's not really...
Yeah.
Building in public is a really interesting thing. And I think that applies to these D2C brands more than people realize, that people want to see it, and it makes them a character in the story. You get involved in the story and the successes and losses of the business you're taking part in. Now I have an emotional connection with the brand. And it's like, well, it may not be on message all the time, but those are my people. And so I want to buy from my people, if I'm seeing those stories. So, and then YouTube, though, you're posting regularly, and then you have your podcast. You're distributing that through the normal channels. But is that more powerful as the podcast listener base, or as using the clips from the podcast on all the other channels?
Using the clips of the podcast on all the other channels. However, it's weird. Like, it's twofold. So the shorts drive most of our views. I mean, we just hit over. I know this sounds like I'm bragging about such a small number, but it's so big for us. Like, we love it. We just broke over 100,000 views on YouTube, which was a massive deal for me.
Especially when you're in a niche.
Yeah. I mean, it's boring stuff. So,
but not for you or the people that are panicked about it.
Or to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think people forget that YouTube is the third most used search engine. it used to be the second until it was Amazon is now the second most used search engine. But like Bing isn't, I don't think it's even top 5. It's like Google, Amazon, and then YouTube. Like people, when they want answer to a question. And I was thinking about the other day, I have a son who has a learning disability, and it's so much easier. He's like interested in, but he's got a fascinated mind, and he wants to learn about things, but he doesn't want to read about them. So he's interested in superconductors like that. We can pull up, and like how many every time I want to learn how to do something, before I read about it, I'm like, well, let me watch. Let me see how easy it is to do.
Yeah.
So as people have questions, and I even know it's not a doctor, a physician's assistant who works in a rural part of America. He's like, yeah, sometimes somebody comes in with like a broken bone that I don't know how to set. And I'm like, let me go get the materials. And I quickly YouTube like how to set this type of bone. But I think when people I think the D2C brand, the founders are warriors, and they're figuring it out on their own. And so they're looking for a knowledge base, and they're looking. And so while some of your competitors might be swamping their inbox, they're not offering them anything of value.
Yes.
For free. And it's like, but you're just trying to sell me something. I need somebody who can fix my pain right now.
Well, so that's the point of my podcast, Ops Unfiltered, is like I got one of our guests, Darren Long. He's like a Utah sourcing expert. He knows everything. We're talking about advice for tooling, but it's like very specific advice for most e-commerce companies. They're doing all of the purchasing and they're negotiating the tooling. So if I can give advice through something like product sourcing, like through an expert, then that's the whole point, is like just niche things that I know can bring value. So shorts they've just been evergreen content that we can share everywhere. We can do an advertisement with it. And then the podcast itself, we do have, it's so wild to me, because sometimes we do have listeners who like, they'll come in, book a demo, like, oh yeah, I've been watching since episode 1. It's like, what? Really? You're one of those 75 people views on your.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you think there's like you think the views are really low, and they are low. But even if I have like 500 people listening to this podcast episode, it's like 500 of the right people.
Well, and now you are also the source. And I think what a lot of people don't realize, like that is evergreen whenever anybody asks that question, because it's also used, that video that links back to your website also drives your SEO up.
Yeah, it compounds. That's what's great about podcasts and YouTube. Like you create the content once, but it lives there. It solves that problem, or solves that search query for forever.
Yeah. There's a long tail with it, and because YouTube's owned by Google, those backlinks are worth more than other backlinks from other places, that are linking back to your. So the big question that we like to ask everybody is, let's talk about like some of the key pieces of creative. Like you've created a volume of creative, but you've obviously discovered some that has performed for you well over time. What are the key pieces of creative that have worked for you, and why? Obviously, I think I want people to understand how important it is to have the pieces that don't work there also, because they'll work for somebody.
Yeah.
Like the volume is a big part of it, but I'd love to hear, what have you found like are some of your most key pieces of content?
Yeah. So number one, top of funnel. So Lila's Lemonade. It brings somebody, that piece alone won't convert people in our sales process.
So what does it do for you?
So it brings in the viewer. By the way, actually, our top performing ones, are the 30 and 60-second ones. Like
the cut downs. Yeah,
it's really cool. So that performs very well. It catches somebody's attention. It generally lets them know who we are, and if there anything we're doing relates to them, and it gets them to our website. So that's number one.
And so where are you running that now?
Meta, LinkedIn,
because which is most people aren't clever enough to do that. But
even LinkedIn, I love that LinkedIn. We're just promoting my thought leadership. So we're running Lila's Lemonade. It's mainly Meta, but also PPC.
Okay.
Maybe YouTube. Are we doing YouTube ads, Sash?
We are. They didn't convert as well.
It's mainly Meta, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. So what other pieces have you done?
So then when somebody lands on our website, I would say, funny enough, some of the top viewed videos or like pages where I know they're viewing content is Meet the Team. So all of these videos about like me, my co-founder, so it's just like team videos. It's really interesting. Then Luminous Versus. So we have a Luminous Versus series, like Luminous versus competitor X, Y, and Z. Those get viewed a lot.
Do those get viewed proportional to how big that competitor is?
Yeah.
Because I mentioned, I often have told clients, like, I don't like to mention your competition. Like, I'll mention what sucks about the competition. I'm like, I don't want to mention their name. But I think in your instance, where there's only a few players in the game, like, you've got to address that head on, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we get so much business is like, okay, let's get down to it. What is actually the difference between you guys?
Do you guys get a lot of like, conversions? So somebody's on NetSuite, it's not working for them, whatever it might be, and they're looking at alternatives, and that's how they enter into that funnel? Or is it, I'm going to buy a software to solve my problem, I'm going to pick between these 2 or 3, and I'm just trying to compare them?
It's about half and half.
Okay.
Some people they're just doing an RFP process, and we're a part of that. And the other half, they're like, this company sucks, I want to get off. And
they keep on raising their rates every year. Or,
Yeah.
I mean, I would, as we saw this problem in our companies, it was just, we have this problem. What's the solution? Oh, that looks like a good solution. It's how much? And you're like, and it's going to take how long to implement? And I'm like, what else is there? And there's just like this huge gap that you guys have seen and been able to serve people in the marketplace by doing things that these guys don't, and the big 800-pound gorilla will do for such a premium, and it will take all your profit.
Yeah.
So Jared, one question I have for you, and I like to ask this one on our episodes as well. You mentioned the efficiency of your ad spend, right? And how the ad buyer, people are asking for your ad buyer. That's the wrong question. But there's also the expense of, that I think a lot of brands now are thinking about. Everybody's realizing how important creative is, and they're trying to determine, well, how much do I invest in creative? Mm-hmm. How do you guys think about that? Because you mentioned instead of doing the booth at a trade show or whatever it might be at an event, we're going to do a studio, right? And so you take that $50,000, for example, and you invest in a studio that it can help you create content over and over again. But when it comes to the performance of your whole marketing, all of your marketing efforts, how do you think about how much you should be investing in creative?
And I just want to pile onto that question, because I want to ask you that in 2 ways. Like, how do you decide investment in time and in money? As a founder, time is at a premium too. Mm-hmm. Both are at premiums, but sorry, I feel like it's an important question, but you're being pulled in so many directions right now, and you're featured in a lot of your content, So how do you budget that?
Yeah. So this is how I thought about it. Maybe this will be helpful for somebody. So, when we started going to market, I knew we needed to stockpile content, and it all needed to culminate with a good top of funnel campaign. So when I started looking around, like, here's how I viewed the market of like good top of funnel productions. So, okay, we could do this, or we could DIY this, where I'm essentially like the creative director, and I'm sourcing the talent. I'm getting subcontractors to do this and that. And like, okay, that will cost somewhere, depending on what we're doing, anywhere between like 20 and 45K. Then I was like, okay, then I could maybe work with somebody who doesn't understand marketing very well. Like, they have zero strategy. They just they don't understand what a good hook is. They don't understand. But I could probably get somebody to direct something and have to spend a lot of time guiding it, somewhere between like 50 and 100K. Then I was like, then there's like the top tier, which is, okay, or I could get somebody who, this will be basically a guaranteed success as long as we had all of the other pieces around it. And I knew that was going to cost anywhere between, it'll be greater than 100,000, somewhere between 100 and 200K. So the way I thought about it was, I know this top of funnel advertisement, it has a shelf life of around 2 years. And as long as we do all of the other pieces well, we're guaranteed to pay this off. A 200K ad will, in Luminous's case, I knew it would bring in over $3 million in revenue. So For me, it was always a no-brainer. Like,
Yeah.
when I look at unit economics, all of the other stuff that complements top of funnel, it can be free basically.
Yeah.
You don't have to spend that much money. It's like picking up a phone and filming a video, just talking to your customers, getting your website dialed in so it converts better. So I always thought the top of funnel doesn't directly convert anybody, but like all of this together, the only expensive part was the top of funnel, but
Yeah.
it led, without it, we wouldn't have gotten the results.
But you did, yeah. I think a lot of people miss that. They're like, oh, this would be great to have, and this would be a nice to have. But you saw it as a necessity to achieve. You would connect it to numbers, I think. And we talked early on about like, okay, how many deals does this have to help bring in to make it worth it? And how does that align with what our goals are? And one of our clients once said, like, well, your campaigns are expensive if they don't work, you know. But if it is still expensive, but it becomes valuable if you're like, well, it does things that our other content can't do. But the content that you're creating does things that the top of funnel ad can't do. And I think that's what a lot of marketers, especially in the B2B space, they're like, well, what can get me a lead? And what's a price per lead that I can reliably get? And even if that's $300, that's worth more than taking a risk on something that can drive a $20 lead, but because it's less predictable. You know, it might go way lower, but it's more predictable.
I think I would guess, I don't run an agency like you guys, but I don't even know if you call yourself agency, but
We do, yeah. I mean, we want to not be a production company, yeah. Now,
Yeah.
especially now with our performance pieces, yeah.
I would-
But we're very much not a traditional agency.
yeah.
so.
Well, I would imagine one of the biggest issues is your customers thinking that the top of funnel is a silver bullet, especially for B2B. D2C, it can probably do a lot of heavy lifting, a lot, like direct conversions to a sale with a good top of funnel in e-commerce. But B2B, you guys can't fix their funnel. Like, you can't fix their mid and
Well,
bottom funnel.
in a business, a decision-making process is never one person seeing a commercial and clicking the button.
Exactly.
Like, they always have to take it to somebody, and then we have to make a decision in a group or whatever. But you can shorten that cycle if you make 10 people at the company aware. Like, if you're hitting everybody in the company, because they all know what the company's operational problems are, you can accomplish a bunch of things, you know.
And that's actually, I mean, that's a great way to put it. Like, we just signed on the Sacramento Kings, for example. And yeah,
That's awesome. Are you going to get some jerseys out of it?
I will. Oh yeah. But like the top of funnel is the role it plays there is like somebody saw the top of funnel and they shared it with their direct report. This person. Everybody's seen it. And then they hop on a demo with Luminous. And the great experience continues. We send a follow-up with entertaining content that educates them. And then anyways, so it's like, it's just well thought through, like every touch point. And we embed content. But the top of funnel, I would say, it's the most important, I think.
Did you find that top of funnel video kind of set the tone for your brand, or did you do it the other way around where you're like, okay, here's our brand, here's how we want it to feel, we want our content to feel that way? Because I think sometimes, especially with these big long form ads that we do, sometimes they end up helping to set the trajectory for the brand that kind of sets the tone for all the other pieces of content in the funnel. Did you find that was the case with you guys, or is that top of funnel just kind of, siloed with the feeling, the lemonade, or does it all kind of resonate down funnel?
That's a great point. I forgot to add that to the list of things, like reasons why I chose that ad. No, we already knew what our brand, like what the feel we wanted, because we had already done content. So we 100% knew that I wanted this. In fact, I think I said this all the time. I was like, this is our brand piece. Like, this is the first introduction. I don't care if there's an immediate ROAS. I care that somebody comes in, they feel these things, and they feel that Luminous is like they just resonate with our message. We'll figure out how to convert them, but as long as I can have that first introduction to our brand, I know I can convert them.
Yeah, we both got involved in a discussion with somebody. I think it was last week, that had posted on LinkedIn saying, like, paid advertising does not work for B2B brands. And honestly, 2 years ago, I might have said, yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, you might be right. I had some ideas, though. I always felt like LinkedIn was ripe for opportunities. And then we did an ad for ourselves, which is very much a B2B ad. It kind of, we have our 5 Ds, which is our rules. But and I'm like, yeah, we're not super deliverable. You can't just click and buy a video ad. And not everybody in America can do this type of video ad that we're doing. But still, our top performing, top of the funnel asset is show it to everybody in America. And it's driving, 600 to 800 people to book meetings with our sales team every single month. But most of the point is like, we now get recognized outside of Utah, and people like, they care as much about the comments in the commercial as the commercial because it has the attitude which is for you guys, it's a little bit more educational, but we can play a lot more. But you still play a lot. Like I think with graphics, with the tone of your videos is fairly consistent as far as they're all fun, even if they're informational.
Yeah, that's such a great example of like, B2B paid advertising doesn't work.
Do it like everyone else.
You dump $5K a month in meta ads, of course, or in your website. You don't even track your website conversion. Like you have to do all of it. And once you nail down a good portion of the funnel, then absolutely it works. Like it's a thing of beauty. And we have a pretty complicated sale too. So I'm not speaking as somebody like, for example, like route. I mean, it's a widget. You click a button and embeds into the cart.
Right.
No, we're a freaking ERP. So I'm not speaking as
somebody. It takes months of implementation sometimes.
Multiple people, multiple decision makers.
Yeah.
It's not a simple sale. So trust me, advertising does work for B2B companies. Paid advertising, it does.
Do you feel like B2B, it's been said, I've heard here at Creatably even, I think B2B could be a huge opportunity for us as an agency, but do you feel like B2B is kind of just maybe lagging behind direct to consumer in terms of getting back to brand, these bigger, leaning more into creative? Do you feel like a lot of these other B2B companies will kind of start to figure it out and catch up?
Totally.
Is that where it's trending?
Totally. Yes. I think that's where it's trending. I'm starting to see more and more companies starting to use humor, but it's personally, I think with the emergence of AI, I personally think that the brands who are going to win B2B the companies that are going to win long-term in B2B are going to be the ones who actually focus on their brand and they embed humor in their content. And because we're losing the human connection almost permanently when it comes to like researching and just visiting a website. So I think people, when they make a buying decision, even if it's for an ERP, I think they're going to want to connect to a human somewhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's indicative of the complaints I've heard about some of the competitors is I didn't have somebody to talk to. And if I feel like I'm dealing with a business, I want to remember that I'm dealing with humans always. And there's some great things that AI is doing, but I think that's a really interesting point. And Dallin asked if he thinks B2B is trending there. And I think B2B will trend slowly there, but that's why there's a really great opportunity to be the first movers.
Yes.
For B2B. I think brands that realize like, we can advertise the way the traditional companies are doing, and our dollars can go actually a lot farther than DTC brands can, because a deal for us is worth so much more than a $30 hat.
And here's why it moves slow, by the way. Here's why it moves slow. Junior level marketer who's actually, like, frankly, really smart, genius. She or he is carrying the load of the entire company. Mm-hmm. She goes to the CEO. Hey, so I've been like seeing I really love their brand. I think we should focus a little bit on the website. And I actually went and got some quotes for a top of funnel campaign. How much does it cost? Like, so it came back at $150,000. Absolutely not. No. Like,
yeah.
The CEOs of those B2B companies, they have to see past the unit economics of that decision. That's why so many of those decisions get shut down. But I honestly think the CEOs who can actually see a vision of building a brand and invest in that, it's going to pay off tenfold in the next 10 years.
Well, the biggest mistake I see, this is also true of D2C brands and traditional brands, emerging media comes in and they want to know if it's important. So they're like, let's get some interns to throw at it. Instead of, this is new technology, this is the wave of the future, let's put our most important resources on this. Because we don't want to reject it because of bad data on our part. You know, so I used to work in cancer research decades ago, and there's two big type of scientific errors you can make. One is rejecting a true hypothesis, or excuse me, the first one is accepting a false hypothesis. That's not a very dangerous error because somebody's going to repeat your experiment and be like, oh, we can't get it to work again. This is what happened with cold fusion. Like somebody found it, and like nobody could repeat their data, so it never got done again. The more dangerous one is rejecting a true hypothesis because nobody ever tests it again. Because the conventional wisdom is advertising doesn't work for B2B, so nobody's trying it again. And so they don't realize there's an opportunity there. And I think people are like, well, we tried TikTok. I'm like, how did you try it? Like, well, we got some college kids and I asked the receptionist if she would do some TikTok dances. And like, oh, so you didn't evaluate it as an opportunity, invest into it. And one of our clients had said this, is like, when we were deciding whether we should do this or something else, I wanted to make sure we invested enough to say at the end of this, the test was valid or not. That we've done the experiment, we know this works or it doesn't work. And I think a lot of people are half-heartedly trying things.
Well, even then, it's like when we started our top of funnel advertising, like it didn't work very well immediately. And so even past that, it's not even that, oh, do a top of funnel ad, put ad spin on it consistently. No, like you have to be learning every step of the, okay, where are they jumping off? Why? What's missing? Okay. Then I would literally go in the studio, like film something real fast, put it there. Like, or Alex would change up
The
this
website,
page.
yeah.
Like, oh, it was just like constant iteration that eventually got us there. So,
yeah, and I think part of that is if you invest in those creative assets and you have them, now you're going to get enough data by putting it in front of, you know, the cheapest type of campaign on Facebook. Well, the cheapest garbage campaign is link clicks, but that's always just garbage, like not worth anything. But video view campaigns, I think, are really underrated. I'd say like, hey, if you're just going to give it to an influencer, you might as well pay for $600. You can get 120,000 views, you know, which is not going to drive a lot of energy, but you're going to get some brand exposure and you're going to start getting a lot of data quickly.
Yep.
You know, and that's where if you want to grow quickly, doing onesie twosie cheap videos and not spending much on ad spend, you're not getting data quick enough to learn from it. You know, you don't want to wait 3 months till you realize our website doesn't work. You need to have, you know, that every day you're getting actionable data on the volume of people.
that's awesome. Yeah.
We only have a few more minutes left, but Jared, I'm curious for Luminous, you know, we're working with a few brands that have kind of nailed the creative in one area of their audience. So like we talked about this before on the podcast, but like a True Classic has really nailed, you know, the sort of creative market fit of selling t-shirts, right? Like they're really good at that. But if they want to branch into selling other types of products, they have to come up with new types of creatives. And so when I think about Luminous, you know, you guys, it feels like you're really getting dialed in terms of your creative and the types of audience that you're targeting. What do you feel like is maybe next that, you know, is like the next frontier for you? You know, when I think about like D2C software companies, I know a ton of them are doing a lot with influencers and a ton on, you know, X and Twitter. And, you know, they have like all the big sort of names like, you know, the Ridge Wallet guy talking about them or whoever. You think about Klaviyo 5 years ago and what they did to sort of grow. So what do you guys think about, you know, is next for you? Now that you've got all this momentum, what are the next pieces of creative that will kind of help you unlock that either other segment or just go deeper into the market that you're in now?
So we're going all in on two things. So more top of funnel stuff, and also expanding that middle of funnel. Like we're investing in like a docuseries. So we're taking a really professional angle on. We're onboarding like a $50 million customer who's like perfect ICP fit, and it's going to be a 3-episode docuseries where they're explaining from their perspective, picking a solution, the problems that they ran into. There's some humor injected. So like, I would just say It's like this really broad middle of funnel content, docuseries. Somebody who does this really well is Adam Robinson from retention.com.
Yeah.
He's
That's good stuff.
so I would say his middle of funnel content is like, I don't know if there's anybody that does it better than him.
Is he the one doing that big event? Like he kind of talked about how they were investing all this money in trade shows, and then he did this. He just like rented this house and had all these people come.
I think so. They did like a yacht party, I think.
What's funny is I think he could do even better if he did something top of funnel, if he actually had a brand piece and some humor.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
his middle of funnel is really his top of funnel. But like if he added something at the top, like a Creatably ad, that would.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Well, I think your brand is poised. I see like in the next year could easily be a $10 million brand in the next. I mean, I think in your trajectory do more, but your funnel is set up to support that. You don't need a lot, but everything will help you get there faster that you add to your funnel, right? I think definitely things. When we first started, you didn't have a lot of people that are like, we did it, we had this problem, and now we don't. You know?
Yeah.
So you're now positioned to have more stories and docuseries of people actually
Right.
implementing, but other people supporting it. And I mean, the equivalent in your UGC world is more like testimonials. Like we had
Yes,
this problem,
exactly.
we did it, it fixed it. We're a brand you recognize. Like that's going to
Exactly.
help people have confidence.
But the goal is, to answer your question, next year to go to $4 million in ARR, and then the year after get to 10. So
That's awesome.
Well, I
10
want you to
in
get
2
there
years.
faster. So I'm
Yeah.
going to be impatient on your behalf. Yeah, well, let's just really quickly talk about that. Yeah, what has your trajectory been the last 2 years, and what has gotten you to where you are today?
So we went to market. SaaS companies will say that we went to market. I mean, we were essentially, I don't want to say beta, because I mean I was building in beta for years before, but for all intents and purposes, we were like in beta, and I only had about like 6, 7, like less than 10 customers, and we were just really building out the product, getting everything good. I actually like hired a sales rep when we started going to market, and we started filming the Creatably ad when I was ready to really start going.
It's like
after
at the end of beginning of 2023, basically. It was or end of 20.
it was about August of 2023. And at that point, we were just like, okay, we're ready to start really expanding, go to market. So we went from about 350K in ARR September of last year to we're at 1.3 million today. So we've grown 300%. We're on track to hit about 1.5, and more importantly, we have the traction to hit 4 by the end of next year.
It's awesome.
So it's like our go to market. It's totally changed the trajectory of our business.
Well, we're excited for you, and thank you so much for giving us your time. I know you're
Yeah.
super busy. A lot of people. Last event I saw you, as I was coming in, you were out the door, like headed to another event, and I was like, I know what it's like being a founder right now, and I really appreciate your time. And thanks
Yeah.
for joining us on the Totally
Yeah.
Advertising podcast.
Thanks for having me.
But if they want to know more about Luminous, where do they go?
Go to joinluminous.com. Follow me on YouTube at Jared_Ward. You can also follow our company accounts on Instagram, LinkedIn. It's all at _Join Luminous.
And what's the podcast as well that you guys run?
Ops Unfiltered. Ops Unfiltered. OPS Unfiltered.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you all next time on the Totally Radvertising podcast. Thanks for joining us.
It's totally rad. It's totally rad.
Join us every week right here on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, or wherever you listen to stuff for your pods.